Today I'm reviewing this Yonex 88 Dial 3 badminton shoe. It's brand new, it just came out in spring 2024. It's an all-around badminton shoe that skews towards the lighter side of things with some injury preventive features. So if you're familiar with other Yonex badminton shoes, it kind of feels like a combination between the ultra lightweight Area C2 and the super supportive Eclipsion C3. It came in at 339 grams in my size 44.5 or 285 millimeters, which is about the same as the popular 65 C3 and about 20% more than the Area C2. Now, before testing out this shoe, it struck me as some kind of splurge option with a slightly higher price and these BOA dials. So I was a bit skeptic going into this review, but I was pleasantly surprised. More on that in a minute. As usual, I had this shoe on court for 10 hours to see how it plays. I bought it with my own money to give you an unbiased review. I'm Asker from Beast Badminton, and let's look at the fit and the upper area of this shoe first. Now, going into this review, I had never tried these BOA dials before, so I assumed that they were just a quicker way to tie your shoelaces. And sure, that is nice between rallies, but the real benefit is how much more you can adjust the fit to fit your feet. It also helps this wide tongue not slide down as much. The sides feel quite snug, which I like too. I noted down just once during my testing that it felt quite hot, but most of the time that wasn't an issue. The sides doesn't have that many breathability holes, and they come in somewhere in the middle in terms of thickness. Now, if you look at the ankle here, you'll notice that it's quite tall and similar to that of the Eclipsion C3. That feels like you're not gonna roll your ankle and your feet is not gonna move within the shoe while you're playing. It has this sausage cushion that I typically am not a big fan of, but on this model it seems stiffer and thicker and helps give you a snug fit. Now, the inside felt like some kind of soft mesh type material similar to what I experienced on the Mizuno Wave Claw 3, which feels like a new school type of cushion compared to the older and I assume heavier and thicker, softer cushion that tends to absorb sweat more that we know from the 65 C3. That shoe feels much wetter during sessions where you sweat a lot compared to this one. Now, I don't know that for sure, but that's just how it felt when I compared the two on court. Now, this new school type of cushion feels like it goes 80% of the way and isn't as soft as the classic thicker type of cushion, but it strikes me as more lightweight and slightly stiffer, which is nice. Now, looking at the heel, you'll quickly notice how tall and stiff it is, and when you're wearing it, it feels like your feet are not gonna go anywhere. It gives this snug, booty type feel without being heavy. So overall, the heel area is terrific. Next, let's look at the outsole and the grip. In terms of outsole, Yonex put on the radial blade sole grip they use on all the flagship badminton shoes, like you'll see on the Aries and the Eclipsion. It's super sticky, it's super gluey, and it's my favorite grip of any badminton shoe at the moment. In terms of outsole or midsole, it has this carbon plate for stability. You'll also notice that they didn't go all in on stability with the 88 Dial 3. If we compare against the Eclipsion C3, that's full on injury prevention and stability, you'll notice how the bottom piece and the top piece is connected into a one piece, whereas on the 88 Dial 3, they're still kept separate. I didn't notice any issues with stability while landing from jumps or quick moves, so no problems for me. Now, looking at the comfort and cushioning in the midsole underneath your feet, I did come off court feeling fatigued after every session. The 88 Dial 3 comes with the usual Yonex Power Cushion, Yonex Power Cushion Plus, but I'm not a huge fan of that as it doesn't feel that soft and comfortable, but that might be a matter of preference. For me, I would prefer to add a slightly more weight to make it slightly more comfortable, but it isn't a deal breaker. In terms of insole, I didn't think about it at all while I was playing, which is a good sign for me, especially because in the more lightweight models I've tested, I usually slide within the shoe, which gives me real problems. But in this one, I didn't have that issue at all. But if we take a quick look at the insole, you'll notice typical breathability holes for ventilation. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard insole in terms of thickness and softness. I prefer the insole from the Yonex 65 C3 with this wavy pattern for more slide resistance. Let's move on to the toe box next. Now looking at toe protection in the toe box, this is where the 88 dial tree falls apart for me. It feels quite stiff in the toe box and it has very limited padding. That means every time I came off court, my toes felt super fatigued because my footwork is mediocre. I have some bad habits. Sometimes I land too hard, I'm late to the shuttle. Maybe I perform too many deep lunges, but either way, my shoes are regularly bumping against the front of the toe box and the padding was just not enough for me. If I played in this shoe as my main shoe, my toes would be dead. And it's such a shame because everything else about this shoe is great, or at least something that I could live with. So this was a serious contender for me as the best all-around badminton shoe. I totally get what they're trying to do, balancing lightweight with some padding, but it's just not enough for me. As an intermediate player, I would rather trade slightly heavier weight for slightly more cushioning in the toe box. So if you're anything like me, you'll probably feel the same. For more skilled players with better footwork, this might not be an issue at all for you. If you're coming from the Yonex Comfort C3, you'll recognize the toe box being quite similar in terms of the stiffness and the limited padding. If you've seen my other Yonex badminton shoes, you'll notice that I often mention the toe box being quite roomy, and for the first time I felt like that wasn't the case. Now I'm not actually sure if it measures differently compared to many of the other shoes being divided up into a male and female model. And it could also be that I was so distracted by the fatigue at the front of the toe box that I didn't even notice the fatigue on the side of my big toe like I'd usually get. All other things being equal, it felt narrower and slightly less fatiguing on the side, which is great for me as my feet are slightly on the narrower side of things. With that in mind, let's move on to durability. As usual, a 10-hour test on court doesn't tell us much about durability of a badminton shoe, so I have two clues that I usually look at, both on the non-racket foot. And so the first one is what I call the outsole tear, which is here. As you can see, it looks perfect. There is no tear, as is usual with Yonex's radial late sole, so that's a thumbs up. The other clue is what I call the lunge tear, when we use the non-racket foot to grind against the floor to break our movement. You will often see extra padding in this area to protect against a tear there. One example is the Eclipsion C3, which you'll very clearly see this extra padding. Now on the 88 dial tree, you'll see there is some overall padding here, but it isn't much. In fact, this doesn't look great. For now it's okay, but I do see signs of a deeper tear and I wonder how long they'll last. For now, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but let's see when I test this shoe against other shoes in the future, how well it's gonna hold up over the long run. Let's zoom in here so you can better see. Now let's move on to the verdict of this Yonex 88 dial tree review. So the Yonex 88 dial tree has a great fit, the heel's good, the bore dials are more fun than expected, the outsole's great, the durability is okay for now, the midsole and fatigue underneath your feet is okay, but the toe box is the deal breaker for me. I just get too fatigued after each session to seriously consider playing in this shoe over the long run. And it's such a shame that that's the deal breaker because everything else in this shoe is so close to being great. And I would gladly trade some extra weight for extra cushion in the toe box. So overall, terrific badminton shoe, and I'm so close to loving it if it wasn't for the toe box. Yonex, if you see this, please consider making an addition for us with shittier footwork. If you're interested in ratings and comparison against other similar badminton shoes like the Yonex 65 C3, then head to the blog. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm Aske from Beast Badminton. I'll see you on court.